Go be dancing.
All right, hang on just a minute while I get this started live.
If it's me and blocked out.
All right. Got it. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
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 All right. I see what you're doing, Margaret. Thank you. Shall we pray? God, we give you thanks for this day, these friends, and your word. We ask that it would be an inspiration to us so that we can be an inspiration to others in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So we are on Proverbs chapter 21. And so unless there is anything that needs to be brought to our attention before we get started, let's go ahead and dive right in. All right. So we're going to start with just looking at the first three verses. The Lord looks at the heart. The king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. He turns it wherever he will. All deeds are right in the sight of the doer, but the Lord weighs the heart. To do righteous and justice is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. Okay, read through those and we will discuss them. All right. So what stands out as strange or inspirational or whatever to y'all today?
It's all about your heart.
It is.
Mhm.
It is. It begins by looking at the human heart. And for oddly enough, or ironically enough, for the people in that culture back then, the heart was the seat of all emotion, the seat of the soul, which is pretty interesting, isn't it? Because that's kind of how we still see it now. I mean, we refer to the heart as love, but that's likely where it comes from, is all the way back then. And so it is, it talks about the heart a lot. I find verse one kind of interesting. What does that say? What's the message that you hear there?
King does God's will.
Yes. That was very much believed and at the very least hoped for, that the king was doing God's will. And sometimes that meant the king was doing things that people didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
Or that weren't right, even, because remember, their theology was that God was sort of pulling the strings a lot more. Maybe not pulling the strings for every move that we make, but definitely pulling the strings of leaders and decisions. We talked about, so according to Exodus, why did Pharaoh not let God's people go?
He hardened their hearts.
Because God hardened his heart. And so, again, it's God doing the leader doing the will of God. So anything else in these three verses?
Now, verse 3 to me says that God doesn't want our resources or us, he wants our heart.
Yes. And of course the rest will follow.
Right. Hopefully.
What, and the verses flew out of my head. Because it's backwards of what people think. It's about giving. I hate it when this happens.
It gets worse.
I'm used to it.
I tell you.
I'm going to be in bad trouble. It's a verse about giving.
Lord loves a cheerful giver.
Yeah, that's the only one that's popping in my mind, but that's not the one I'm looking for.
But there's one that
And your heart will be also, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also.
Yeah, so yeah.
Okay, which is actually the reverse of what Hugh just said. Because a lot of times what it is, we think where your heart is, there your treasure will be. When you love something, you get to it. But what we also find is where your treasure is, that's where your heart will lie. And so where you want your heart to be, that's where you put your treasure. So, if you want more faith, give more. If you want more trust, give to that more. And here's the thing. This passage is what brand loyalty is based on. I'm sure advertisers aren't like scouring the Bible, but let's be honest. Isn't that what it's based on? But yeah, very much. To do righteousness and justice is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. This is also shown in the prophets. In Amos, Amos blasts the people, and where it's quoting God by saying, "I detest your sacrifices and your offerings." Why? Because they weren't showing righteousness or justice. And so that's basically what he's saying is, don't just be offering sacrifices like it means something if it doesn't. I don't want your money if you're doing it to pay the light bill. I want your money because, or your offering or your sacrifice because you love me. So let's move on to the next part. Oops. Verses 4-8. Sins of a proud heart, lies and violence. Haughty eyes and a proud heart, the lamp of the wicked are sin. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to want. The getting of treasure by a lying tongue is a fleeting vapor and a snare of death. The violence of the wicked will sweep them away because they refuse to do what is just. The way of the guilty is crooked, but the conduct of the pure is right. All right, go ahead, check those out for a little bit, and then we'll discuss them. All right. So, which verse needs our attention now?
Well, I think 2, 3, and 7 pretty much go together. And it's with all about God wanting us to do what is right and just. Because even 2 and 3, all a man's ways seem right to him, but the Lord knows what's in your heart. And to do right and just is more acceptable to the Lord than the sacrifice. And again, in verse 7, the violence of the wicked will drag them away, for they refuse to do what is right. So to me, all of those 3 verses are still emphasizing the importance and the emphasis that God places on doing right and just. Okay.
So what then is doing right and being just?
Love your neighbor.
That's a good start. Yeah.
And I think verses, in as much as you have done to one of the least of these, my brethren, you've done it to me. That's sort of where I sort of use as a guide.
Yeah. I mean, and who is my neighbor?
Right.
Those that you don't want to be around.
A lot of times. Because I mean, these are things that we struggle with this. But then it goes into 2 again. I mean, I know that was in the last section, but again, with Proverbs, let's be honest, it is a random breaking down of verses when it comes to Proverbs. But all deeds are right in the sight of the doer. That's important. And Diane's laughing because it's true. I mean, have you ever been in an argument with somebody even though you were wrong and you knew you were wrong? No, because you always think you're right. People say you always think you're right. Well, yeah, don't you? I mean, doesn't everybody think they're right? Otherwise, you come at a situation thinking, I don't know. And then you say, I really don't know. But I'm not going to put something down unless I'm taking a test and I have to guess something. I'm not going to put something down that I think is wrong. I'm not going to have an opinion that I think is wrong because that's what my opinion is. However, that's the problem. I find it interesting as I sit back being in the generation that I'm in, which is we're the neutral generation, the one that's just watching everybody else burn everything down. And you people are crazy. But coming from my generation, the generation, by the way, of children that y'all raised, so y'all can take credit for this. The messed up generation is the one that's after us, and y'all are kind of hanging. They call them boomers, but see, y'all are on the end that raised the Gen Xers, and so you're okay. But
Glad to know that.
it's the other ends, and look at okay, you've got, and I know this is a contentious issue, but all right, let's talk about Black Lives Matters or police shootings. Okay, there's some justice there, some at times. I mean, like, but we all have our own. We all bring our own baggage, our own opinion, our own thoughts with us, and we allow that to stay in the way of what justice is. Whether it's justice for the shooter or justice for the shot. You know, and we're so content on being right that we're always right and our way is always right that we're not interested in hearing it from another angle. My brother studies social media because he's a professor in advertising and media and stuff, and that comes under it. And he said that like the percentage of somebody whose mind is changed by a social media post is minuscule. And the analytics of the social media tend to pull up articles that you would tend to agree with. Like they figure out where you are on the political scale and the things that you like and the things that you comment on. And those are the things that you see more of, because they basically get people on your team. And so it makes you feel more right, more superior, more just. And so instead of figuring out and looking at, okay, what would God say about this? Because we don't want to hear that a lot of times. I mean, you know, I was talking to a pastor yesterday who was talking about, you know, and we talked about, well, what could get you in trouble? And he says, well, you know, in one church, you know, in my last church, people got upset because they said that I was making liberal decisions. And I said, well, is that during COVID? And he goes, well, yeah. And like during COVID was the first time in my life I'd ever been accused of being liberal. And it was just because, okay, I was looking at things and trying to be, you know, we were looking together, trying to be right instead of being, you know, trying to do justice and do righteousness instead of trying right. But everybody has their opinion on everything. And it's, you know, and if you go against their opinion, I mean, let me tell you what ticks somebody off something fierce is when I can back up biblically something that goes against what somebody else thinks. People don't want to hear that. People do not want Jesus to prove them wrong.
Rationalization has become an art for people. I mean, we
That's true.
and try to find a reason for trying to convince somebody that what we are doing is right, whether it is or it isn't.
Well, and now one thing, and I admit, I also am normal and I bring my own biases and, you know, and I bring all that to the table too.
Well, we all do.
Right. And so what leaders have to be very cautious of is why they're making the decisions that's being made.
Right.
How much of my baggage is coming into play here? Is it because I think I'm right, or is it because I'm doing justice and being righteous?
Right. Which is, again, what's in your heart.
Yeah. Yes. And we're not leading with heart, we're leading with head. And actually, we're not even using much of that. We're leading with our opinion. And if opinions are like another part of the body, and maybe that's what we're tending to lead with these days. I'll let y'all figure out the rest of that phrase. Let's see. We went. Well, it was 4 to 8. The getting of treasures by a lying tongue is a fleeting vapor and a snare of death. And we've heard phrases like or proverbs like this already, haven't we?
Mhm.
You know, when you get things illegally, immorally, unjustly, they tend to not stick around. Stacey and I just finished watching a movie, The House of Gucci, and it's based on like the story of the Gucci family. And, you know, when they were doing Gucci things, and it turns out like in the end, the wife of the son of one of the original basically took the entire business from his uncle and cousin, because his wife sort of moves things around and makes it happen. And then at the end, she has him killed. So sorry to spoil the ending for you, but it's based on a true story. It's history, so you can look it up. But yeah, because, you know, she let that get in the way. And it was, at the end of the day, she's in prison. A lot of good that did her, you know, no riches, no nothing. Anything else on that? Well, all righty. Let's go to the next part then. 9 to 19. Final outcomes and judgments. It is better to live in a corner of the housetop than in a house shared with a contentious wife. The souls of the wicked desire evil. Their neighbors find no mercy in their eyes. When a scoffer is punished, the simple become wiser. When the wise are instructed, they increase in knowledge. The righteous one observes the house of the wicked. He casts the wicked down to ruin. If you close your ear to the cry of the poor, you will cry out and not be heard. A gift in secret averts anger, and a concealed bribe in the bosom, strong wrath. When justice is done, it is a joy to the righteous, but dismay to evildoers. Whoever wanders from the way of understanding will rest in the assembly of the dead. Whoever loves pleasure will suffer want. Whoever loves wine and oil will not be rich. The wicked is a ransom for the righteous, and the faithless for the upright. It is better to live in a desert land than with a contentious and fretful wife. All right, so read through that passage and get back together and talk about it. Why? All right. So what do you want to talk about with those?
Well, it sounds like it starts and ends with living with a contemptuous wife. Everything else falls in between somewhere.
Yeah, it's not a good idea. It talks about it's better to live in a corner of the housetop
Or a desert.
or desert. Yeah. Basically exposed to all the elements.
Right.
It's kind of like it's better to be homeless than live with a horrible wife. Because if mama is never happy, you're never going to be happy. So that's just bad. I mean,
Maybe that's where Paul was coming from when he never got married.
perhaps.
I'm gonna have to leave you all now, so y'all enjoy the rest.
All right. We'll see you tonight.
Yes, I hope so.
All right. Take care, Hugh.
Bye.
Bye.
So what else other than horrible wives do y'all get out of this when
I ain't seen this. I'm in Orange Reach.
Crochet.
13's pretty interesting. If you close your ear to the cry of the poor, you will cry out and not be heard.
Sort of like what goes around comes around.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But also, if you look at the prophets, a lot of times, and when they are prophesying gloom and doom to the nations, one of the beefs that they typically have is that the poor are being all run over.
Mhm. Right.
And so then in that day they cry out and are not heard. I want to look up 14. What is your thoughts on 14?
Well, we know that a bribe is not good. And so the person that's being bribed is going to get angry and perhaps be harsher on you than if you had just let things take their course.
Yeah.
And if you give a gift in secret, that might help the person put them in a happier mood so that they're going to judge a little less harshly. I don't know.
All right. So, I just went blank.
Yes,
Let's
you did.
see. Let's see what the commentators have to say. That is verse 14, right?
Mm-hmm.
Read together with 13, this proverb hints that some people may be willing to give a gift or bribe to soothe human wrath, but it will not make a gift, to the poor to avert divine anger. Both lines of this saying emphasize the hiddenness of the bribe gift, the secrecy most likely a sign that is given to pervert justice. It is not clear whether the anger is mentioned as the king's, a judge's, or that some other person's. The point is that one thing to accept the settlement for personal damage and quite another to make a payment to ignore someone else's just cause. So the gift is basically to make it better, and the bribe is to win. I guess that's probably the best way to put it.
Mhm.
So what else?
Well, number 17 is not a, there are a lot of people that aren't going to be happy.
Well, and basically it's, if you blow your money on, like, I mean, it's almost like short-term gratification.
Yeah.
And well, instant gratification, I guess. You know, if you want pleasure, you go out and buy stuff, and you know, you won't you'll suffer want. Well, for one, you'll always want something. And
Because
yeah, and see, the lover of wine and oil, I'm not sure that it's talking about alcohol there as much as it is about nice things, the finer things in life, because it's coupled with oil.
That's what I was going to ask about that. I thought, well, what's oil? And maybe, I mean, obviously they had olive oil and things of that nature. But when I, that's the part that I wasn't sure of.
Yeah. No, I think that it's talking about the finer things. I mean, of course, it could be talking about alcohol, because let's be honest. I mean, if you're a lover of wine, you're not going to be rich.
in my notes, it says that it says that the life that loves or strives after only personal pleasures is a wasted life. In the New Testament, the parable of the prodigal son shows this in a dramatic way.
Yeah. But it also kind of misses the point of the parable of the prodigal son if it reduces it to that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, and the note in mine, because I had not read the note until just now, says, talked about the wine and the oil. Both are associated with lavish feasting. And then it says oil was used in various lotions or perfumes, some of which were very expensive. So it goes to sort of what you were saying.
Yeah.
It's lavish lifestyle.
I was kind of like, I went to school for this stuff. That's crazy. So anything else in those verses? It's interesting how, I mean, like, I feel like we've learned a lot in this lesson of Proverbs, and and much of what we've learned is because of the repetition that we find.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's not as much to discuss because we've already discussed some of these things before, but it's that repetition, which, oh, by the way, as y'all know, it's how you teach. Repetition, repetition, repetition. The more people hear it, the more they'll remember it. Maybe I should just start preaching the same sermons.
I don't think that would work. I think they would
No.
find a lot of fault with that.
I've always been jealous of comedians that, you know, they write like one act and then they'll hone it down, and some of them like make it all scientific and mathematical, and they'll like based on the number of laughs and get their tempo right and record it and make it better and things like that. And we get one and done. It's either good or bad.
Wow.
And hopefully we'll just build on it for next time, but it's kind of the way it goes. All right, let's move on to the next section. What's that?
One and done may be important to one person, while the next time you do something, it'll be important to another person.
That's true. Very true. 20 to 23 examples of wise moderation and strength. Precious treasure remains in the house of the wise, but the fool devours it. Whoever pursues righteousness and kindness will find life and honor. One wise person went up against a city of warriors and brought down the stronghold in which they trusted. To watch over mouth and tongue is to keep out of trouble. All right. Look at those. All right. So what about those?
What about those?
Exactly. So do y'all see anything about them? Jumps out at you, or?
Can't tell you how many times I've either said or heard, watch your mouth.
Mhm.
Yep.
And that's one that's been repeated in different ways a
Oh,
lot.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Very much. And it's so very true.
Watch what's coming up.
Mhm.
Mhm. Don't.
It's interesting. 22 is pretty neat. A wise person went up against a city of warriors and brought down the stronghold in which they trusted. Basically, it's wisdom over strength. Better to be smart. Well, better to have wisdom than brawn, I guess.
I thought of the Trojan horse where they brought the army in
Mhm.
and they it took down the town.
Exactly. I mean, that was the wisdom that was,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that they won through being smart.
Yep.
What else do y'all see in those?
Just as Jeremy says, work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, exactly. Okie doke. Let's roll on. All right, we're going to look at 24 to 29 now. Sins of pride and power. The proud, haughty person named Scoffer acts with arrogant pride. The craving of the lazy person is fatal, for lazy hands refuse to labor. All day long the wicked covet, but the righteous give and do not hold back. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination. How much more when brought to evil with an evil intent? A false witness will perish, but a good listener will testify successfully. The wicked put on a bold face, but the upright give thought to their ways. So take a minute or two to look at those.
I see it coming.
All right. So, any of your favorites in there?
What was my Rachel Lacey this morning? Lacey,
I think it's interesting that they gave the proud, haughty person a name.
Yeah.
I can see young men using that and calling somebody, hey, you scoffer. And only the people that had been studying it would know what it was about.
I bet, yeah.
mhm.
Sup, Scoffer? All day long the wicked covet, but the righteous give and do not hold back. So all day long the wicked care about what somebody else has, and the righteous give up what they do. Isn't that interesting?
But true.
Yeah, very true.
I find 28 interesting. A false witness will perish, but a good listener will testify successfully.
Yeah. And once again, we hear about the importance of listening.
Mm-hmm.
Stopping to listen.
Keep your mouth shut, you might learn something.
Exactly.
Just the facts, ma'am.
Yep.
Just the facts.
Proverbs, according to Steve, keep your mouth shut. You might learn something.
My daddy taught me that a long time ago.
Yep. That's true wisdom. And it's just it's a simply translated proverb. You just didn't know it.
That's right. But he could explain it to you or understand it.
That's right. Which is wisdom. I mean, you know, communication doesn't work real well if people don't understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
What does it mean? The wicked put on a bold face, but the upright give thought to their ways.
Well, you've heard of bold-faced lies.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I mean, I guess the wicked could.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought of that, honestly, Margaret. But yeah, that's exactly. But I guess a bold face is,
Mm-hmm. And they do
With
it
the-
very well.
yeah, with a straight face.
Mhm.
Mhm.
It's kind of,
It's
With
unnerving
great conviction.
when you find out. It's very unnerving, or it was to me.
that somebody can lie that easily.
Yeah. Rather lie than tell the truth.
Well, it's fun. I mean, like, thankfully, our children are horrible liars, and they always have been. Stacy talks about when she has a student that can just lie, look you straight in the eye, and you know that it's a lie because in the fourth grade, I mean, typically when you're telling like if you're a teacher and you're on somebody, you already know the answer. It's not like you're guessing.
Right.
And they will look you in the eye and create a story.
His name, David. Can't remember that employee's name. I tried to forget him after I got rid of him. Good riddance.
He could lie like a rug.
Rather lie than tell the truth.
I've met people like that,
Whew.
that sometimes they just lie for the sake of lying.
Mm-hmm. He will lie when the truth would serve him better.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's finish it up with the last two verses. Yahweh's victory, 30 and 31. No wisdom, no understanding, no counsel can avail against the Lord. The horse is made ready for the day of battle, but the victory belongs to the Lord. So check those out. Well, I don't think we need, it's two verses. So what do you think of that?
Like the Lord's the winner.
Mhm.
I don't care how smart you get.
That's right.
That's what I hear in this. It doesn't matter. Look, I want you to be wise. I want you to gain in wisdom. But at the end of the day, you need to know this.
The Lord.
You ain't going to be smarter than God. God's still going to win. So realize that you can know these and memorize these to your heart's content, but you're still not going to get up on God.
Right.
And so I think that should have been the last verse in the entire book, I think. And maybe it is. Maybe there's one like it, as much as they repeat things.
Yes.
Now I have to find out.
Curiosity.
Can't satisfaction brought it back alive.
Nope. Well, then they go to oracles. At chapter 30 and 31 are oracles. And so yeah, it will be interesting to see how it closes out. Of course, again, what we've talked about is that Proverbs has basically no rhyme nor reason. It's just a bunch of lessons, which have been very, very interesting. All right, folks, that's all we got, unless y'all got something else. Okay, if not, I will see you soon.
He's gonna
Have a
take
good one.
it.